We return to Ladies Can We Talk with host Debbie Georgatos on 660 AM The Answer.
Welcome back to Ladies Can We Talk. This is Debbie Georgatos, and thank you for tuning in. Ladies Can We Talk every week. We have online right now Dr. James Carafano, who many of you probably heard that name, but he is with the Heritage Foundation. He is actually a prolific writer and an activist, really, and knowledgeable in the areas of foreign policy. At Heritage Foundation, he's the National Security and Foreign Policy, Foreign and Defense Policy Studies Vice President. Is that right?
I was going to say guru, but that works too.
Guru is a good word. I love that word. Yeah. Also, I see you did some of your graduate work at Georgetown, right?
I did, yes. I'm a Hoya, and I'm very proud of it. But my undergraduate was at the Military Academy at West Point because I went in the Army. I was in the Army for 25 years before I retired. And then I finished up my doctorate at Georgetown.
Okay, well, Georgetown's my law school, so I always I love Georgetown. I love the law school, actually.
Yeah, we like it so much that we live in Georgetown now because my wife also went to Georgetown, and we couldn't agree on where we would live in D.C., but it's the only neighborhood that we both like. So we're just down the street. We can see the tower and everything.
Wow, all right. Well, I want to turn and talk tonight about this, the Iranian deal, which is, to me, shocking that we cannot get, that it just seems to be just driven by party line, by partisan vote. But I see the Iranian deal as one of the biggest kind of foreign policy missteps America has made. And I'm curious how your overall sense about the Iranian deal and what it's going to do for us.
I agree with that. And I also think it is in many ways a defining moment in American foreign policy because it is the starkest statement of kind of the way the president wants to do foreign policy and the way some people in the world want to do foreign policy. And it's not just our president alone. All the European capitals are ecstatic over this deal and saying, oh, this is going to be great. Of course, the irony of this is these are the same countries which are apoplectic about the masses of refugees which are flooding Western Europe because of all of the violence and destabilization in the Middle East and North Africa. And this deal is going to give the Iranian regime over $150 billion. By the time we're done, we're going to pump more money in Iran than America put in Western Europe in the Marshall Plan. And Iran is going to use that money to even further incite violence and destabilize the region. So here they are complaining about living with the aftermath of this terrible destabilization, and they're basically turning around and funding what's bound to even drive more migrants and more refugees flooding in Western Europe. It really is the equivalent of kind of geopolitical suicide.
That is a great way to, first of all, it's a great point about this deal by these countries that deplore or they're concerned about all this massive refugee resettlement need, and they're just creating more with this Iranian deal. That's a great point. President Obama, he's looking, a little bit down the road toward the end of his second term, and so he'll be gone, I guess, and we hope in a year and a half. But, I keep thinking about his legacy where in the world. I mean, I think he pushed this Iranian deal in Washington as part of his legacy. He wanted to be seen as someone who really worked in a new way with Iran, which is considered, it is the largest terror exporting country in the world. It's a dangerous, dangerous country. And he wanted this to be part of his legacy. But it seems like his legacy in many ways has weakened America's foreign policy position in the world, especially, actually, as I think about it, even the depletion of the American military.
Right, and this will cement his legacy, and it will be and this is not a partisan comment. Look, the terrorists and evil people in the world, they don't care who runs the West Wing. I mean, they don't really care if it's the left wing or the right wing. So when I talk about these things, it's not because I hate the president or his political party. I mean, I spent 25 years in the Army for a reason because I believe that protecting and defending our country is important. So this is just being blunt about what's going on, but the president has really failed on every front. Like, look at the Asia and Middle East. I was just in South Korea. North Korea has never been more unpredictable and dangerous. China has never been more aggressive. The Middle East has never been in such an unsettled state since the 1970s. Western Europe has never been more nervous and unsecure since the end of the Cold War. And this all happened on President Obama's watch. And it was all greatly contributed by his policies. And in many ways, the Iran deal is the ultimate example of that. It's, much like, all progressive foreign policy is we want a nice-sounding easy button, which sounds like it solves all the problems. So we're going to engage with Iran, and Iran's going to behave, even though there is no evidence for that. And, in fact, we've seen that to the contrary. Even since the deal has been announced, Iran has been more aggressive in supporting Assad in Syria. They've been more aggressive in supporting the militias, which are helping destabilize Iraq. So their foreign policy has actually been worse since they've been promised all this money.
It's so alarming. And at the very beginning of President Obama's, I'm trying to remember what the year was. I know he came into power, the presidency in 2009.
2008.
Yeah. Or I think maybe it was sworn in 2000. Anyway, what I was going to say about it was, didn't he very early on, wasn't that part of the deal, which was to kind of make nice with Russia, which, is not really a close U.S. ally. Make nice with Russia. We pulled back on this planned missile defense installation in Poland. I remember, wasn't that early on in his administration? Yeah,
that was called the Russian reset. Is we were going to kind of reset relations with the Russians, and they were going to behave and cooperate with us. And, of course, they've done the opposite of that. They invaded the Ukraine. They have supporting Assad in Syria. They're actually redoubled their nuclear program. They've been building up their conventional forces. They've been hostile to us in the UN Security Council. So they've done everything but be more cooperative.
I just think it's so important to point that out to people because, especially as Hillary Clinton is a candidate for president, I know that we're not doing a political discussion here; it's just foreign policy. But she would point to many of her policies she engaged in as Secretary of State as part of or in support of President Obama's approach to foreign policy, and that was a big one, this reset with Russia. But in addition to emboldening Putin and Russia into deciding they can be more aggressive because America is apparently not going to stand up to them, we also sent a message to some of our allies like Poland and the Czech Republic that we're not going to stand with them.
Right, and look at the flip side of that. It's okay, we get it. You want peace in the world. You want to try and make friends with bad people. I mean, Americans instinctively kind of recognize, well, if you be fair and, maybe you can, make something happen. We're not an aggressive people. We don't like war. We're not warlike. So even if you have that kind of impulse that says, okay, let's try, right? I mean, let's at least try. We're a big country. We can defend ourselves. But let's look at the insurance policy. So what happens if all these make nice with these people doesn't work? What's the backup plan? And, of course, that is the hard security, the ability to defend ourselves and our allies. And when you look there, President Obama's score is actually abysmal. One of the things that we started doing is last year we began publishing the Heritage Index of U.S. military strength, where we evaluated the capability of all the military services against the major threats in the world and, what the capabilities of our allies are and where the military might have to go. And you add all that up, the grade was marginal. So here we are spending over $500 billion a year on our defense, and the best that we can deliver to the American people is a marginal capability to defend their vital interests. That's a shocking indictment, I think.
Oh, it really is. And actually, just the cutting of the size and scope of the American military. And again, this fall, starting, I guess, this week, we're going to be looking in Washington at a budget and the whole question of the sequestration, the cuts are going to come in, and the conservatives are going to be arguing for more money for the military. But we have really depleted the American military significantly already.
I think that's true, and I think the great thing, and people, if they want to look at the data for themselves, they can just go to the Heritage website, heritage.org, or they can just go to Google and type in Index of U.S. Military Strength and look at the data, which is all there, and it's all transparent, and it's all quantified. I mean, it's not like just people, guessing. I mean, we've got, you have hard numbers. Actually, a lot of these numbers are actually provided by the U.S. government that does this analysis, but it just shows that we have been steadily falling behind. And these are conscious decisions that our president has made. I'll give you another example, which is counterterrorism. And when Obama came into office, we often kind of joked that his policy about dealing with terrorists was just it was Bush. He just didn't like all the harsh, rhetoric that that the Bush administration used. So we used to call it Bush Light, and everybody kind of laughed. And that was true for about 2 years. But in 2010, President Obama essentially put his stamp on counterterrorism strategy, and it was basically withdrawing from Iraq, downgrading the effort, really, taking away talking anything about religion or Islam or Islamism, and just really kind of doing drone strikes. And we predicted in 2010, and we have a report on this as well. It's called Counterterrorism for the Next Wave. It's another Heritage report that you can find. We predicted in 2010 that this is not going to work, that there was going to be resurgent terrorism in the Middle East, which there absolutely is under ISIS. And today, the terrorists control more territory between Al-Qaeda and ISIS. They control more territory than they did when President Obama took office. There are more victims of terrorism today than when President Obama took office. And in many ways, the situation, the terrorist state that we face in ISIS today is greater than the terrorist state that the Taliban had with Al-Qaeda in 2001. So by every objective measure, we are worse off in national security and foreign policy than when President Obama started.
We're speaking with Dr. James Carafano of the Heritage Foundation, and I'm so glad you gave those links to the Heritage Foundation website because it's one of my go-to sources of information. It's always researched, it's footnoted, you can understand where the information came. I guess one closing thing I wanted to comment on, and you may have a reaction to, was I noticed when President Obama recently visited Alaska, and he was up there talking about his global climate change initiatives, which we've actually had another heritage expert on talking about at least once. But during the time he was there, I thought this was so symbolic of the failure of our foreign policy. Chinese naval ships were in the sea, in the ocean surrounding Alaska. Did you see that?
Yeah. So the irony is we were actually meeting with we meet a lot with foreign governments and embassies and talk to people around the world just to make sure that we're not just, talking to ourselves and, just convincing ourselves the way the world works. We were actually recently talking to people who were countries in the Arctic region, and we kind of asked them, what do you think about this? And, to a person, they said, they looked at that trip by President Obama and they said, that was a photo op. I mean, that was President Obama using Alaska as a backdrop for his politics, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't really care about the Arctic. He doesn't really care about the people that live in the Arctic. He doesn't care about their security. He doesn't care about their prosperity. And the Chinese ships, that was no accident. The timing of that was not just, oh, my God, we just happened to be there. President Obama was there. Who knew, right? That was the Chinese saying that you are a paper tiger, right? And that's what Al-Qaeda says. It's what ISIS says, that we are a paper tiger. You have a president who uses words which sound great, but behind that there is a hollowness, which our adversaries recognize and which our allies lament.
Dr. James Carafano, I thank you so very much for calling into Ladies Can We Talk. You are a fount of knowledge.
Let's do it again. We have a great show. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.